Welcome to a new edition of Realities and Perspective show. We have today with us a special guest from the States, Paul Gibbs. Thank you, Paul, for accepting to be with us on this program again. We talked in one of the previous programs about Talmidim, about discipleship in a postmodern society. And now we want to talk with you about Pais movement. But for the people who didn't watch the previous program, I want for you to say a few words about you, about what we're doing and how you came to the point to be involved to start this Pais movement.
Okay. Yes, well, right now I am just absolutely passionate about what God is doing around the planet. I'm married to my wife. We've been married for 31 years. We have two wonderful sons and just recently had a granddaughter. My first grandchild I'm very excited about. So I became a Christian when I was 14 years old through a teacher who indirectly led me to Jesus through taking me to a tent crusade. And I had a skin disease, and that's why I went, because there were rumors of people being healed. I never got healed at the tent crusade, but I prayed for myself afterwards, as I was trained to do by the church I was attending, and God healed me. So I had a real desire to explain to people, wow, God is real, you need to hear about him. I thought God was calling me to be a missionary, so I went to train for a few months to be a missionary, and at the end of my course, rather than going on to another country to continue my training, I went back to Manchester. I'd realised that I thought God was calling me to be a missionary, but really he was calling me to make missionaries, and that's what I do. I'm a missionary maker. So in 1992, I recruited other people to do what I was been doing for 4 years, which was reaching into schools. I'd found a way of helping schools and sharing my faith in schools, but lots of young people wanted to find out more about Jesus, and so I knew it would need more than me. And so I founded, with my wife, we founded the Pais movement in 1992.
It's a long time, and the Pais movement is already known and implemented in many countries. Maybe you tell us more about which country opened their doors for Pais movement. But before talking about Pais movement, how you feel the need of this movement, and why you start this movement, in fact? What gap? What is a part of this Pais movement? I asked you from the beginning. Maybe at the end of the program, I ask you again the same question. But what the needs? Because you have to take care or to understand the spiritual atmosphere, the map, status. Now, what God is doing all over the world.
Well, it's a really good question. So it's driven by a Jesus question. If viewers did watch the other show, I talked about discipleship, and my Jesus question was, why is it that we educate people and hope they have an experience when Jesus took people on an experience and educated them along the way? And we talked about Bible study, and we talked about why is it Jesus why do we teach people what to think when Jesus taught people how to think? So yes, around about 1988, I had another Jesus question, which was, why is it we spend so much of our time, energy and resources inviting people when Jesus spent so much of his getting himself invited? And there's a real power to getting yourself invited. There are some benefits to that. So it's not that we don't invite people to church. Obviously, Pais is all about linking people from schools and different youth communities into church. But it's about how do we mobilize the church to get itself invited into the community. And for me, that was specifically schools. So that was the need. I just don't think the church knows how to get itself invited anymore. I think all we know is how to invite. I think individual Christians don't know how to get themselves invited into a conversation. And I think that that needs to change. So Pais has been hopefully a catalyst for that. We've got ourselves invited into schools all around the world, using the same methods, and it's been exciting to see Jesus' methods work all around the world.
Before talking more with more details about Pais movement, let's insert at this point of our discussion a short spot, a video spot you gave us a few minutes ago before entering this program about Pais movement. We are again in the studio for Realities and Perspective. It was a short 3-minute spot about Pais movement for people to get more familiar with exactly what means Pais movement. So you mentioned in the first part of our discussion about church, about school, about communities, because some of our viewers say this will be some movement among churches in a church. In a way, yes. But explain more. What's the place of Pais movement? Who are the target of this spiritual project? Schools, communities, countries?
Well, let me talk about schools first, and then I'll talk about maybe how we broadened out. But so you're absolutely right, it is church-based. So I think there are lots of organisations that are out there that basically say to the church, give us money and we'll do the job for you. That's not what Pais is. So all of us are placed in different local churches. And we are based in those local churches, but we reach into the schools and we act as a relational bridge between the school and the church, and also mobilising the church to reach the school as well. I think that's really important about what we do. So we believe that the church is a sleeping giant and can do an amazing job in its community, but the church needs to learn new ways of engaging with its community.
You mentioned about starting the Pais movement. How we start in 1992, I think.
Yes.
How this came, this idea? What was a dream in the night, or someone told your wife, say, Paul, let's do something new? How you decided?
That's a great question. So I was in schools for 4 years, reaching young people, and with the invitation of the school, I was helping the school as I was doing this. But I hit a problem, so I am a problem solver. That's where most of my vision comes from. It's problem solving and asking God awkward questions and God asking me awkward questions back. So I'm in the schools and students started to say to me, well, how do I find out more about this? How do I find out more about this God? And I would say to them, well, there's a church around the corner from you. Why don't you go to the church? And of course, their question was, will you be there? Will there be anybody we know in that place? Because that's a very strange thing to do, to go to a church. I've never been to a church before. You're asking me to walk into a strange building with strange people. So initially I invited a local pastor and I said to him, maybe you can come to this particular school because your church is next to this school. I was going all over Manchester. I couldn't be in all these different churches at the same time. So he came along, we did a lunchtime club, and every week he would come along. The students got to know him, and so they would go to his church because they got to know him. And we thought, wow, that's the key. Relationship is the key. So I was in different areas, so I approached different churches and said, hey, when I'm in your area, I'd love to link young people to your church, but I need somebody in your church who can be a relational bridge. So I recruited lots of other young adults. I was young at the time. I recruited other young adults, and we offer a free apprenticeship, so like a free missions gap year. We offer free training, free accommodation, and free meals. We put these young adults in teams, and we go into schools. And these young adults act as a relational bridge from the school to the church. So in a synopsis, that's how Pais works.
Interesting needs, and I think you receive confirmation year after year that this is the good.
Yeah, it's growing.
Yes, and how you start this in Manchester first?
Yes.
And how this was expanded in other cities, maybe other countries?
Yeah. Well, essentially what happened was that initially it was British, so people from other parts of England heard about the training and they came to train with us. Then they would say, oh, you know, I'm from Birmingham, this would be great in Birmingham, this would be great in Liverpool, this would be great in a different parts of the city. So we would say, well, if you go back as a team leader, we will send some other people with you. And then what happened after a few years is, because of the internet, people heard about Pais from other countries. And they would say, this would work in Canada, this would work in the US, this would work in Germany, this would work in India, wherever it was. So now we are in 14 different nations around the world, and we're looking at some more nations. We'd love to partner with churches in Romania, and it's expanding. So essentially people have come, they've experienced it, they thought, I want to take this back home with me, and that's how we've essentially started and spread.
We talk about your friends in Green.
Yes.
He has been in our studio a few a month ago and asked him if he is able to summarize in 2 minutes how he can see as a British the Pais movement. Let's see together what he said.
So the Pais movement started in England 26 years ago. They've now become a global organization functioning in 13 different countries, 4 different continents on the planet, gathering momentum. Their heart and vision from the beginning was to create disciples that would make disciples. So they talk about making missionaries that would create disciples. So they originally started, and still do, providing apprentices for local churches to tie the local church to the local schools. And so they've had unbelievable, remarkable success. Within the last 25 years, they have probably spoken to at least 2 million children in school worldwide. And they are relentless in their passion. And many times people said, you can never do that. You can never do that in America because of the division between the state and the church. But they have actually found a way to bridge the gap, to be culturally relevant and helpful to local school administrations, bring the life and morality and light into a situation. In fact, I was just in Canada, and there was a school just south of Vancouver that they'd had a Pais team for a year. There was no church that would want the Pais team in that area, but the school says, we don't care if the church doesn't want one. We want the Pais team, because the influence of those young people upon our young people in the school was absolutely remarkable. And so the Pais movement, you should check that out, paismovement.com. They just do some phenomenal things. Apprentices is one. They provide apprentices to business in the commercial world. They provide training and teaching and discipleship through the Taladim. They have an amazing process to study the Bible called Havarim. And that's actually been used by unsaved people to study the Bible, because it doesn't demand a guru who knows everything about the Bible, but a process which will actually lead you to the truth. They're a fantastic organization, and we're hoping they're going to come to Romania.
It was a contribution from Ian Green, one of your partners. He summarized in 2 minutes what are the goals, the values of Pais movement. If you want to add something to this?
No, I think Ian does a great job. He should probably have my job. That's what it's right. We are missionaries making missionaries, so everything's about multiplication, and it is very much about understanding new ways of engaging with our community. So I think there's a problem. One is that we can be so evangelical that we're not invited in. But the other extreme, it seems to me, is that we get invited into our community, but we have no voice for Jesus. Sometimes I'll talk to churches and, yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that in the community, but somehow the message has been lost in that. So with us, I think we're learning how to get ourselves invited. We're in places in Pakistan, we're in probably the easiest place is Ireland. The most difficult place, I would guess, is Islamabad, and we have teams there because we're learning to respond to what people are asking for without necessarily watering down what we can actually do, and that has become key. And there are some techniques and skills to know how to do that, I think. So
I have a question who came, I suppose, from our audience, maybe a Christian leader. They said, how my church could be involved on this. Okay. Where is the place of the church in Pais movement? Talking generally, it doesn't matter the denomination or country.
Yeah, and Pais is a non-denominational, interdenominational organisation. So, well, the first thing you can do is you can send young people. Maybe you send young people to Bible college, which is wonderful, but they probably have to pay for the Bible college. You can send people on Pais and it's free. Our apprenticeships are free because they're not coming simply to study, they're coming to do. It's on-the-job training. So you can send people on to Pais. Their accommodation, their meals, their training is free. And we will train them in mission, discipleship and Bible study, leadership, communication skills, and some other different skills.
So we have a Bible training center? with the information that are on the site that is now on the screen.
Yes, oh, that's great. And it's not a building as such. Yes, there will be some seminary style training, but the majority of their training will be on the field with regular updated training and mentoring. So everybody who comes on Pais gets a mentor or a discipler, you could say. Everybody gets ongoing training every week, but they're doing it in the field. And then what can happen is a church can receive a team as well. And again, this is throughout the world. So a church can say, we want a team of young adults who are going to reach primarily young people, but we also have teams for businesses as well, and church planting. But we're going to send, bring us some, we want some of these young adults. And again, it's a low cost, finding families that maybe will host our apprentices, or perhaps some other accommodation. We can figure that all out. So yeah, churches can send and churches can receive as well. But everything we do is based in a local church.
It's for a country as Romania, as Ian suggested. If some churches want to start a Pais movement project in their city, what are the procedure? What to do? What is a formal or informal procedure to try to do this experiment?
Will contact us. Right now we don't have teams in Romania, so we would say contact us centrally in Texas. Just email us and we'll speak to you about that, and we'll get the ball rolling. So sometimes people say to me, have you got any particular nation on your heart? Yes, every nation. There's no nation that we don't want to reach to. So if there are churches leaning forward, then we will help them as best we can. Initially, however, we're going to need some raw recruits from Romania. So again, I would just really encourage the churches and the pastors, send us your young people. We can find opportunities for them all over the world. They will return to you trained in discipleship, trained in Bible study, trained in mission. They'll be trained in some ancient methods that work really well in a postmodern world.
We are taping this in 2019, this program. Maybe we rerun in a year from now or 2 years from now. But now how you see, from Pais movement perspective, how you see the spiritual temperature in the moment in a church? In a church? In a church. Maybe in the States, maybe in UK, maybe in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, well, so obviously it depends on, I guess it's the kind of person I am. Means that I'm connecting primarily with churches that are thinking to themselves, we've built a crowd, but we're not sure we've built disciples. So maybe they've learned from past movements how to make the church relevant, exciting, and they've got people in the church, which is good. But now they're thinking, how do we now mobilize those people? We have people in the church, but their marriages are in just as much trouble as people outside of the church. We have people in the church, which is great, but they don't really maybe know how to study the Bible for themselves. They're relying just on the preachers. They don't know how to train other people in what their gifts and talents are. So I think we have a spiritual temperature where there are churches that have built a crowd, but don't know how to mobilize that crowd or make disciples. A lot of churches now are super attractive and attractional. And we think that's good. We're not saying that's a bad thing. We're saying we just need to go beyond that. I heard somebody say recently that many years ago, people loved the head of the church, but were embarrassed about the body. And I think that's true. I think many years ago, maybe it's still true in some churches, people love Jesus, but they're embarrassed by what happens in church. It's awkward, it's done badly, wherever. In many churches nowadays that have moved forward, there's a new problem, which is people love the body, but they don't know the head. And I was talking to a couple of people recently who said that in their baptismal service, when people were baptized giving their testimony, they were saying things like, since I've come to church, not since I've come to Jesus. I love this church, not I love Jesus. So we have that problem now where maybe people love the church, but they've not understood God's purpose for them in the church and in their world.
So it seems that you know the situation in Romania very well.
Okay, okay.
So my question is, what is the essence of the Pais movement? From what you said during almost 1 hour, I note here something about their relationship is a key. Can we put this together with Pais movement? Maybe you have other few values?
Yeah, well, we would say our DNA is based around a different book of mine called The Kingdom Principles. And these are 6 kingdom principles that we see in the relationship God wants us to have with him. So Jesus said, don't be like the pagans. In other words, do not worship God in the same way the pagans worship their gods. So what did the pagans do? Well, the pagans basically said to their God, if I do this, is that okay with you? If I do this, will you bless it? What do I need to avoid so I don't get into trouble? So the essence of Pais is a different kind of question. And the question is, Lord, what can I do to most advance your kingdom? So rather than being a pagan and saying to God, God, if I do this, is that okay with you? If I do this, will you bless it? It's saying, Lord, what are you doing? And how do I get involved in blessing that? Knowing that you will take care of everything else. Jesus said, don't be like the pagans. Instead, seek first the kingdom of God. You might say the dream or the vision of God on this planet. And if you make that your primary concern, I'll take care of the rest. And I would say that's the essence, that's the main driving force of Pais is let's seek first and advance the kingdom of God and allow God to take care of the rest.
The churches all over the world, including Romania, there are some tendency, I think it's a shake in the church in this moment, looking for a new level, new relevance. Some churches are going to the bigger church. Yes. Some, they say they consider the sales group. Yes. Others, they said they consider the social ministry. And I'm asking you this because where is a Pais movement in all this shaking of the church?
For me, that's fluff. Big church, small church, cell group, wherever. The importance is, are our disciples seeking to advance the kingdom of God? That can happen in a big church, it can happen in a small church. I don't think small churches are more authentic than big churches necessarily. I don't think big churches are necessarily more successful at discipleship than small churches. A lot of it comes down to leadership. What is the motive of the leadership? If the motive of the leadership is to encourage their congregation to advance the kingdom of God in their world, then that leadership will be looking for tools to equip their people to do that. And the size of your church is not the most important thing. It's the heart of your church and what you're aiming for. What is the vision of the church that's important to me, at least?
I hope this will challenge for some of the viewers who are curious about this. I should ask you from the beginning, the name Pais.
Yes.
How came the name Pais? I ask you now at the end of our discussion almost.
No, that's okay. It's the least important thing about Pais. It's the least inspired thing about Pais. Although I look back and think it was a good thing. So what happened was when I was working on my own in the late 80s, I was reaching into schools on my own, and there were a group of ministers that were very encouraging to me. And I remember going to a meeting one day, and I was giving a report of what I was doing, and the pastors were saying, oh, what Paul is doing in schools is wonderful. What Paul is doing. And I thought, no, it's what we're doing. So I went back to my pastor, Harry Letson, who was my pastor in Manchester at the time, and I said, Harry, I want them to stop referring to this as Paul's work. We need a name. If we can give it a name, maybe they'll stop seeing it as just me. And my pastor's a real scholar. And he said, well, there's no name in the Bible for teenager, but there is a name for a child who serves the king, which is Pais. So Pais means a child or a child servant of the king. Well, later on we developed the kingdom principles, and we talk about seeking first the heart of the king, so it fits really, really well. Pais, I hope, is a movement of people who are seeking what the king loves. So yes, we love the king, but we want to go beyond that and love what the king loves. And we want to serve him in seeing his vision, his dream becoming a reality, not use him so that we just have a better life today.
As a child, you said.
As a child, yeah. The innocence of a child, coming to Jesus as a child, which is, of course, what Jesus talked about.
It's interesting because you mentioned this even at the end after people understood a little bit what means Pais movement. So this is a movement or restoration of what the true relation between Jesus and...
I hope so.
Because he said, let children come to me. Yes. He said. Okay, so now we were supposed to insert here a segment from your film, The Spirit of the Pioneer. Because the film is long, it's more than 1 hour long, and we broadcast on Alfa Omega TV entirely, and probably we rebroadcast from time to time. But say a few words about the film. How came this idea of the film, and what's about? Because we have a chance only to insert a few minutes.
Let me first tell you what the film is about. The film is about pioneering and the 4 stages that any pioneer will go through. So anybody who has a vision to do something different is going to go through 4 stages. First of all, it's the stage of revelation, and you get a new revelation. The problem with that is that people will believe in you, but they may not believe in it. And then it's revolution. So this next stage is where people realize it's working, but maybe it threatens the old way of doing things. So they kind of realize it's working, but they almost, resources are taken away from you because what you're doing is threatening the usual way of doing it. Then it becomes about resistance. Resistance is when you are growing and people are like, well, this is not going away anymore, so let's actually get on board with this new movement. But what happens is people say, we want to give you resources now, but you're going to have to change the way you do things. And in the film and in the book that I wrote on this kingdom pioneering, I talk about the fact that you can compromise anything, but you cannot compromise what made you unique in the first place. And then you get to the level of reproduction. And reproduction is all about the challenge of reproducing other people and making sure you're not threatened now by the new movement that comes from within your movements. So that's the 4 stages all pioneers or all visionaries will go through, is what the film is about. It came about because there was a production company in America, in California, a film production company who had some connections with Pais. One of the CEOs child was on Pais, and they saw what that young person did in Africa, and I think they fell in love with Pais because of that. So they said, we want to come and we want to film this, we want to do a documentary on this. So it's a full-length feature film. It explains Pais very well, and yeah.
Where you taped this, the film? Which city or areas?
Oh, it was taken, I think it was 6 different countries, so Brazil, England, Ireland, Germany, Africa and America.
Maybe the next part of this film, the second film, will include also Romania.
Yeah, maybe. That would be great.
I hope. So, thank you for being part of this program. So, yes, I don't know, want to close this program and to see segments from the Spirit of the Pioneer. Before asking you how you see the Pais movement and God's movement and the extension of the kingdom as a movement beyond Pais movement in the next 10 years.
We feel God's clearly spoken to us about this. So for the last 25 years, to be on Pais meant you had to be a Pais apprentice or staff member. And we realise now that actually God's called us, that our staff and our apprentices, our teams, are to be a catalyst, but we are to resource everybody else. So I think Pais will continue to grow our teams. We will continue to provide people and programs. But we want to work out how we can help churches be part of Pais, or we can be part of them. What about teachers? How can we resource teachers in schools? How can we resource pastors? And we do masterclasses and books in order to help that. So, yeah, where we've been an organisation that was doing our own thing, we want to keep doing that, but we want to now allow all our resources to influence and help everybody else. And the vast majority of our resources are free and can be downloaded from mypais.com. And if people are interested in joining Pais, they can go to paismovement.com.
And because we are for the first time here at Alfa Omega TV, we had the chance to visit for a few minutes the different departments, and we have the first piece of cooperation. This book, Talmidim, could be more in the future, could be this program, maybe other video resources. How you see the role of the media? And maybe you can mention how you feel about maybe Alfa Omega as one of your partners.
Phenomenal, because we're just a small voice, and you give us a platform, and I think therefore you're giving God's work a platform. I think there are many things in this world that are happening that are fantastic in little corners of the world. And unless you have a mega church, nobody hears about them. But these kind of programs are wonderful to shine a light on what God is doing around the world and bring it to the consciousness of the church worldwide. So I think this is absolutely phenomenal. The job that you're doing is absolutely incredible. Otherwise, I think things that are God would not get multiplied. you know, but who knows what will happen because of this program. Maybe there'll be churches who will get on board and do what we do. They don't have to do Pais, they can do it themselves. There may be people who will come and start new movements because of the spirit of the pioneer, who would not have heard or known those resources unless it was for this program.
Thank you, Paul, and we pray that God will bless you and will give you more open doors in many countries as a Pais movement and as a ministry. And thank you for being here in Romania. I think through your presence here this time you put a seed through our studio, through our program, also through the conference that you have been part. So for the rest of the space, the time of this program, you can see segment from a special film produced by Paul Gibbs and his team, Spirit of a Pioneer. May God bless you.
I don't believe the world needs a new kind of program. I think it needs a new kind of person. People who open up new possibilities because they have a different spirit. People who live by faith and not by fate.
He was probably the most unlikely man that I would have thought to do this work. He came in, he looked like a, I don't know what a punk or whatever he was, with this strange hairstyle, skinny looking guy, seemed very unassuming, seemed to be someone who really just took life so easy, so laid back. He would not have been my choice. You can see all of the plugs on the wall where the computers and that were plugged into. I think he was here and then he moved over there. and put a desk over there and somebody else worked here. I'm not quite sure how it worked. I used to have this office, but then I got thrown out. When the place grew, I had to move out, and then I moved in downstairs. He didn't dress the way I thought a minister should dress. He didn't. He came one day and he told me he was going to dye his hair some colour. We have this difference of opinion. I said it was purple and he said it was some other colour. I don't know what colour it was, but I kind of panicked a bit because I'd been having some difficulties in the leadership over Paul and the way he was dressed and Lynn as well. And my argument with him was, well, you know, how many young people have you reached this week?
I think pioneering is a bit like sailing. 1 minute it's plain and simple, and out of nowhere it gets really challenging. And it's only in the challenging times, I think, that you really learn the skills that you need. I believe there are 4 stages of pioneering that all people with a vision or a dream will go through. And I hope this film will help them, because I think what this film will be is the stories of pioneers that I work with.
All right, so he's joining the prisoners team.
Something like that, yeah.
I was not really a very athletic child. I had asthma and eczema. So when I was 13 years old, a school teacher decided to take me to what it turned out to be a healing crusade in a tent. And in that place I became a Christian. And so I started to attend the youth group at Sharon Church in Manchester. But at 18 I rebelled. I left church, left home, and I tried to leave God. So I ended up in this house, and in that house there was myself and another backslidden Christian, 3 very rich students, a member of a cult, a hippie, 3 anarchists, and a ferret. And we had all these kind of incredible discussions about the meaning of life, but it was what was sown into me as a young person at school that kept coming back to me. And so in my early 20s, I kind of came back to God and decided I really wanted to serve Him. The question was, how would I do that?
Eu participei do Pais na Inglaterra durante 2 anos e foi um tempo maravilhoso, foi um tempo realmente onde eu vi Deus agindo de uma forma tremenda na vida de crianças e adolescentes. Eu não poderia conter isso, eu não poderia prender isso para mim mesmo. Então, voltei para o Brasil para implantar o Pais Project aqui no Brasil.
Quando Deus promete algo, vocês vão responder, Ele cumpre a promessa.
So when I was around 23, I left to be a missionary. I wasn't sure where, I wasn't sure how. What I didn't expect was that God would tell me to come back to Manchester.
I always had this strong urge to do something extra for God, and I kept asking questions about what's life about? What am I doing? After school, what? So what? Work in the secular world, so what? You know, I kept asking myself questions and questions because there was this vacuum inside of me that kept saying that there's more to be done, there's more to be, but I couldn't put my finger on what that more was. And I just saw the change that God used me to bring in my church in England. And then I went on to USA, and then I thought, Africa needs this. So I said, I'm coming back to Africa to bring Pais back to Africa.
When I got back to Manchester, there was a lady in the town who had opened an occult shop, and she had essentially, through a publicity campaign, stopped anybody going into local schools. So some young people had a baked bean eating contest, and they shared their faith every week with their friends, but they were about to leave to go to college, so they asked me if I would come and take over every week. And while I was there, I looked around the school thinking, you know, there's 30 people maybe in our youth group, and yet there's hundreds in this school. Why aren't we doing anything about the young people in the school? So I approached the Manchester Education Committee and asked for their personal and social education curriculum. And then I approached the teacher and said, look, when you teach law and order, you invite the police in, and when you teach health and safety, you invite the firemen in. So when you do these 6 subjects, could you maybe invite me in? And the teacher said yes.
So we moved over here to the States to pursue my MA in cross-cultural ministry. While I was doing that, I got involved in working as an intern in a large Texas church. And in that time, I began to see some disturbing trends with the young people that we were working with, particularly related to the area of them really owning their faith. So our then senior pastor found out about this organisation called the Pais Project, and was really intrigued by it. So he actually asked me if I would go over to Manchester. There was a conference going on that Pais had put on. What Paul was doing with Pais there, it was just amazing to me. We decided to invite Paul over to work alongside me in the student ministry that we're working in.
The first stage of pioneering is revelation. It's a lonely stage because in reality, vision doesn't really come to a committee, it comes to an individual. And I believe the way vision comes is from a conversation of awkward questions with God. I think we think vision comes with a dramatic moment, but usually the dramatic moment just kind of gets your attention. And then if you start to ask the question, the vision begins to become more defined.
Well, as an organisation, one of the things that makes Pais really exciting and really accessible to people is that it's free. For the churches, it's an incredible deal where they get a full-time volunteer in their youth ministry, they get a full-time team in their community, and they pay very little for that privilege.
I was really impressed right away just by the presentation, by the professionalism of it, the year-long apprenticeship, the fact that it was free, all of that stuff really drew my attention, and knowing that I would be able to come to a city like Natal where the kids just have a hunger for God and they just need someone to take an interest in their life and tell them that they're loved.
And these children need somebody to love them, need somebody to cherish them, and Pais has given me such an opportunity to do that, and it's something I love so much.
Good morning. It's 6:30 on a Wednesday morning, and one of our team gets to lead one of the FCA meetings here at the school.
Let's read it 3 times. Okay. People of the Bible. So mine says we have
Lisa, on our Pais team, she talked to one of the parents of one of the children, just hanging around the school, you know, one of the kids, and told the lady, the mother, about our church. Anyway, she ended up coming, brought her husband, brought her kids, came on a Sunday, and they're still coming, and they've, you know, been seriously impacted, become Christians, and, you know, are integrated, if that's the right word, into church life.
I can think of several examples where young people have been contacted through schools, through the clubs and different things, and they've often been totally unchurched.
So we have certain activities out in the schools, but they also have some activities in the church building. And some of these people have come, and some of the people are the type of people that would never even set foot in a church.
Kind of reaching people that we perhaps couldn't reach without Pais and without the work. That's probably a major highlight for me.
One of the amazing things that for me that has been, I mean, it's just been fantastic, is how we've managed to get alongside youth pastors. The Pais teams become part of the ministry of that church.
Yeah. One of the brilliant things about Pais is that every single apprentice is placed in a local church where they have support, but also it forms a massive part of their training.
The whole point is that it's not just about an organisation that trains people, it is an organisation that has a heart to serve the local church.
It is a Pais team, yes, but it's their Pais team, and the team is there to serve the vision and the mission of that church.
There's never been any friction with that. They've immediately embraced the vision, and they've come alongside that vision, and they're partnering with us to see that vision come to pass. And so I think the Pais concept, the philosophy of Pais, works very well.
We have a lot of different kinds of people, in the sense of from different countries, from different church backgrounds, from different experience levels.
Wir kommen gerade vom Bewerbertag von Pais und das war ein sehr aufregender Tag. Zum Beispiel als Team mussten wir eine Unterrichtsstunde vorbereiten in einer kurzen Zeit und mussten gemeinsam ein Bild malen, und das ist ziemlich kompliziert mit einem Edding, und uns gegenseitig koordinieren, und das war sehr aufregend. Besonders fand ich, dass es uns in diesem Bewerbungstraining nicht darum ging, oder Bewerbungstag nicht darum ging, zu sagen, sind wir gut genug für Pais, sondern es ging darum, ist Pais der richtige Platz für uns.
Like on Pais Ghana, somehow we are able to find out what everybody's very good at doing. So we're such a strong team. When we are organizing something, everybody has their speciality.
My name's Dan Randall and I'm the hub leader in East Lancashire in Pais GB. A hub is a collection of multiple teams in an area. Some of the real benefits to the hub are a real strength in a community sense within Pais to support each other, to connect.
We worship together, we share stories, we build each other up. It's a great chance to connect and to see that you're doing this journey together.
It's so cool to know that when we see things happen here, we hear about it happening in other places. We see on Facebook, and it's different because it's in a different cultural context, but the signature of Pais is on it, and above that, the signature of the kingdom of God.
I think one of the advantages of bringing a Pais team on is just their age and passion for God. So they model that a lot of times for the students. Having somebody that's around their age or slightly older who has given up a year of their life to come a lot of times overseas to serve with the ministry, the students hear that, hear the story, and then they see the model of that, and it's a huge advantage.
We have been obviously in the youth ministry for a long time before Pais came, and what we noticed was the biggest change in our students was their spiritual health. They were energetic, they were passionate about going out and serving and giving in the community and in their schools.
We were heavily involved in M4 when we were on Pais, so I had to run a few of the conferences and weekenders and things that we did. But I guess for me, because we took so many of our own young people onto M4, it was seeing the difference in them. So they'd go to the conference and learn something, but then they'd be back in their schools doing text to prayer posters and putting them up and bringing people into our youth ministry. For me, that was just like a brilliant story to see them come to Pais, get it, do several years of M4, but instead of it being like, oh, at M4 it would be a high and then it'd go low, actually just seeing them go from strength to strength. We saw our youth ministry grow because of that and see them bringing more young people in. And now some of those young people are now leaders, and then they've become 18, 19, and now they're leading youth ministry with us.
At this first stage of pioneering, I think that people believe in you, but they may not believe in it.
And you've been in America, you've been there, you've seen it working there. Yeah. Well, they told Paul it wouldn't work because you don't allow religion in schools in America.
So I had a student that was graduating a year early, and she wanted to go on Pais. But her parents weren't going to let her go on Pais until somebody went and authenticated Pais. So I went to England, and when I got there, I really didn't understand what they were actually doing. I didn't have the paradigm for what they were doing. When I left, it dawned on me that in the presentation that Paul had made to my students several months before, he had actually been quite humble about what the Pais Project was accomplishing in England. So Paul and I are having lunch, and we're sitting at a really uncomfortable table in a really uncomfortable restaurant. He looks me in the eye and says, "Do you think Pais would work in the United States?"
I have worked with young people for a longer time, and it was always a dream to reach a lot of young people. And one time a friend of mine, he crossed the school and he heard something like impression of Jesus, and he said to him, "You go into the school and I would do some miracles." And then he has this idea to go into school, but he has no idea how to do it. And he asked several people, "Oh, how could we do it? How could we go into school?" And finally he found someone he knows, Paul Gibbs, and he said, "You have to go to Manchester to Pais, to Paul Gibbs." Paul Gibbs shared a picture. It's like a soldier laying on the barbed wire so that all the other soldiers could go over him. But after you stand up from the barbed wire, you are hurt, and it's very painful, and it costs you everything, really. Yeah.
So I did this, I suppose, debate with my leaders that Paul should be brought on into the church. He worked for nothing to begin with.
And I think when people get a dream, they automatically believe that God's just going to provide the funds for it, but quite often God's expecting us to fund it in that first stage. And maybe that's partly why there are so few pioneers, perhaps because it's a lot easier to get funding, to get a salary to execute somebody else's proven idea, even if that idea is a little outdated and even if we know that idea isn't working that well.